I don't go to the opera to see life. I go to the opera to see art.
Hello, this is David Perlman for Conversations at the WholeNote. My guest today on this leap year 2016, February 29th, is Marshall Pynkoski, co-founder of Opera Atelier with Jeanette Zing, La Jeunesse Zing.
Yes.
20 years, 6 months, 5 days, and 4 hours ago. 30 years ago.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can hardly believe it myself.
So here we are, and you've got the immediate context for this, and for looking at the pictures that you brought, is Lucio Silla opening on April 7th.
Yes.
And running till the 16th.
That's it.
Your usual haunts.
Yes. The Elgin Theatre, our beautiful, beautiful opera house. We're so happy to be there. But I'm very, very excited about Lucio Silla, David. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to say we're having a Mozart premiere in Toronto, in Canada. Lucio Silla has never played in Canada before. I say without any reservation, it is a great masterpiece. This is not a juvenile work. This is written by the 17-year-old Mozart, a fully formed aesthetic. In fact, the amazing thing is when you're hearing it, you're going to hear large excerpts of Figaro, you're going to hear Don Giovanni, you're going to hear Magic Flute. All of those things were already in his head. It's his second opera seria. He actually conducted it when it opened, and it's a stupendous piece, a fiendishly difficult piece to cast, but very, very, very exciting. In fact, it would never have occurred to me if it weren't for the fact that Mark Pynkoski, that great French conductor, got in touch with Jeanette and me, asking if we would be interested in staging it for Mozartwoche in Salzburg.
Oh yeah.
That was very exciting for us. We knew the Mozarteum, we knew that we would be in the house for Mozart, and the beautiful theater that is built there. So we agreed. We had a fantastic rehearsal period, a fantastic budget for the show. But then it was such a marvelous success, it was invited to be part of the Salzburg Festival the next summer.
Okay.
And so it sort of took off from there. So then we had 2 runs at it with the same cast and a fantastic amount of rehearsal time. Opening night, it was such a thrilling success, the director of La Scala came up and said, we want to bring this to La Scala next year. So then we did it at La Scala just 1 year ago. Right now, it was just a year ago that we were in Milan. So this is actually our 4th run at it, if you can imagine. I'm so happy to be bringing it to Toronto.
So La Scala, but the first time it was in Milan, La Scala didn't exist.
No.
It was, what, 2 or 3 years before La Scala opened?
I think La Scala feels that it happened at La Scala simply out of a sense of national pride.
Yeah.
Yes, that the director said it happened at La Scala, it premiered there, and so we have to have it back.
Right.
So, but I was amazed, though, I must say, in Milan, the enormous, enormous pride that everyone takes in that opera house. It was everywhere you go. I mean, people are just in awe if that's where you're working. Running across the street to have lunch. If you said, we're in a real rush, we only have an hour, we're rehearsing next door, instantly everyone was running. It was so, so charming to see how everyone loved that venue. Even people who haven't been there. It's always the case, isn't it? You know, people who live there, they don't go as often as people from outside of the city. But even then, they were proud that La Scala was there and it was part of their heritage.
When they did it in Santa Fe, I noticed Susan Graham played, is it Cicilio?
Yes.
The central pants role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Silla's great, what, nemesis?
Yes, exactly.
Is that the right word for
exactly,
it?
Yeah, yes. Well, it's a very, very difficult role. It's a castrato role. It was a soprano castrato role. And very, very difficult. I shouldn't say difficult, just extremely challenging. The only thing to me that betrays the fact that this is written by a 17-year-old is that he's very clearly showing off. I mean, it's the ornamentation, the ornaments he writes out for the singers. You just think, you've got to be kidding. In fact, the singers, I mean, we had some of the greatest singers in the world at La Scala and in Milan. And to watch them prepare for this, when they came in, I would say all of them were only able to get through half of their arias. It was like watching athletes in training, and they were all saying, it's okay, it's going to be all right, I'm going to be fine, I just need some time to live with it and find out where I'm breathing or how I breathe through my ears. And you had to really just be calm and think, it's going to be okay, these people know what they're doing, as they slowly maneuvered their way into these roles. But very, very powerful orchestration. I mean, it's really a glorious, glorious work, but moments of great tenderness and charm, and also some moments of humor, which I think Mozart always found irresistible.
So he was 17?
Yes, 16, going on 17.
He wrote 3 of these things in about 5 days or whatever it was.
Unbelievable.
Right?
I mean, the music was just pouring out of him.
Right after a visit to Milan?
Yes, yes. And it turns out he conducted the opening night performance in 1772. He had a lot of things going against him. He had stupendous singers, but there were some singers that were extremely problematic, some that were very temperamental. And also, the man who was supposed to sing the title role of Scylla was unable to sing it at the last moment. And Mozart ended up with someone that he was not happy with at all. So it was a question of altering music, trying to deal with that very fragile ego. He had a lot on his plate as a young man. But it's, again, a real masterwork. It was very interesting working with the singers in Salzburg because most of them had never sung it before. One, Inga Kalna, who was going to be singing here in Toronto, singing the role of Cina, which I would say is the most difficult role in terms of coloratura. I remember her flipping through the score and just saying, it doesn't get better than this. Mozart doesn't get better than this. Wow. It's all here. And which took me so by surprise because I was still getting to know the opera and I didn't know how the singers would respond. But they were all so challenged but so gratified. And wonderful characters. I mean, this is a moment from history, from real history, doctored perhaps to a certain extent, but Scylla, he did exist. In fact, ironically, Tito in Clemenza di Tito makes reference to Scylla at one moment. And this dictator who is dangerous, unpredictable, and at the same time obviously has a core of goodness, or at least a granule of goodness still left inside of him. Because when he is confronted by real love, by real devotion, and he sees that on the part of the woman who he's trying to force to marry him, and when she and her fiancé are obviously willing to die for each other, he's so overwhelmed, he simply can't resist that.
I should have warned people there was a spoiler.
A spoiler, oh no!
Somewhere in the interview
But
here.
maybe I shouldn't say anymore.
Maybe with the great technological resources of editing, we can say spoiler alert or something like that. So when you did it at La Scala, you were faced with, I won't say the same challenges, but they threw you in, you were telling me, with 2 weeks.
Yes, in fact, not even a little less than 2 weeks. So imagine,
the whole thing together.
I went from Salzburg, 8 weeks of rehearsal, plus I was flown to Paris to work with Rolando Villazon, and Mariana Carbassa was flown to Toronto to work with me. So it really ended up being 10 weeks of rehearsal. And at La Scala we had 10 days. And the singers were all, of course the invitation came so late, because it wasn't until the director had seen it. So the singers were all booked with other gigs, so they were all coming late.
Was the ballet integral to Mozart's first production?
Well, you know, there's not enough information to say yes or no, but there is gorgeous dance music in it. And Mozart did love dancing. I mean, that was something he enjoyed tremendously. So for me, this just helps inform it tremendously. So we had a full chorus, a full corps de ballet. In Salzburg, it was our dancers, the artists of Atelier Ballet, who were with us.
For yourselves, La
Yes.
Scala has
La Scala,
a
they
ballet
have
attached.
a glorious ballet. So the hardest thing was choosing what dancers we would work with.
A historically informed ballet at La Scala?
Oh yes, very much so.
They know
Yes, yes,
they
and
have
also, you know, I
the
think
range.
there comes a point, David, that learning, if you have a really well-trained ballet dancer, ultimately is supposed to be a blank page. It means everything's in place so that you can do anything that you're asked. And this is the case. You get a core of dancers who are that well-trained, and you start teaching them different arms, a different kinetic of movement. They just take that in like any new choreographer coming in and saying, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. So they listened very carefully with Jeanette. She had hours and hours of rehearsal with them. Occasionally there were a couple of people who didn't seem as well suited. They brought in other dancers and she chose the people that she thought were best suited. But they danced beautifully. It was really very, very interesting. In fact, I would say dancers tend to be more flexible artistically than most singers.
So a bit more capable of inflection
Yes.
in what they do.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think it's the nature of the training, considering dancers start as children, singers start as adults. I make a sweeping statement, but you know what I mean. And so dancers have all those years to feel that they're simply a receptacle. You're supposed to fill them with ideas, and then they give that back to you. And then as they become artists, there's something personal in it. But singers, there hasn't been that culture around them. So it's a whole other thing. Singers,
Is it part of why you like to work with the same people?
Absolutely it is. I mean, I spend my life looking for people that I know are going to have the flexibility that we need vocally, physically, emotionally, in every way, to be able to really challenge themselves in terms of the tremendous amount of rehearsal time that we put in, and also the demands that we make on them, both physically in terms of staging and vocally. I've always wanted Opera Atelier, and Jeanette has always felt the same way. We've wanted it to feel like a rep company. We may have to disband every time we finish a show, but we try to bring people back again, cultivate them, grow with them, because of course the artists we work with make us change as well. But always adding some new people, always bringing in some young people so that there's a mix that's happening. And this to me creates a wonderful, healthy atmosphere. No one needs to protect themselves when they come into rehearsal. I can say to people, come on, I need some bad acting here. We're inching. Put it up here, and then I can pull it back. And no one's embarrassed. You know, it's that kind of thing. Or even vocally, they're asked for something else. We have people who are great Mozart singers, and suddenly we're having a workshop preparing them to sing Lully. I mean, this is a huge jump, a huge change for them. And they can't be careful about it.
I want to go back and ask you a bit about, you said a little bit earlier, you talked about, I don't know whether this was your phrase exactly, but you know, the beloved Elgin. But is there, working in the houses that you've been visiting, Versailles, Seoul,
the BBC
Salzburg, etc., etc. Is there any element of love-hate in it, in terms of what it doesn't
I think every
let you
theatre
do?
that's the case. The problem with the Elgin is because, although it's very, very beautiful, the stage isn't, we wish the stage were deeper. It's a heritage building. If only they had knocked out the back wall. They could have done it, you know.
They could
But
have.
there was something about that back wall on the stage. It was integral to the original structure. And so we are very, very hampered in terms of depth
Of stage.
Yeah. And that really shows, in terms of the amount of time it takes to be able to light the show really effectively. We need to have very flexible, very, very bright lighting designers because we just don't have the depth that people usually have. Or when we did our big experiment using an enormous amount of film in Handel's Alcina, that film should have been backlit or back projected. It would have made life so much easier. Instead, we had to hang a projector the size of a Volkswagen from the balcony, and that was a terrible thing. We had no complaints about it. I mean, our audience, they really should all have a crown in heaven. They just thought that's what they're doing. We're going with them. But that was, that sort of thing, yes, very frustrating. But at the same time, the house has a gorgeous ambiance. There's a tremendous sense of occasion when you walk in. And to me, that's something that I think opera needs. I think opera belongs to, or at least 17th, 18th, 19th century opera, I think it belongs to a world that's meant to take us out of this world, not ground us back in it again. I don't go to the opera to see life, I go to the opera to see art. And that doesn't preclude it affecting my life.
Sure, but life needs to ambush you once you're there rather than carrying it in with you.
Well, the thing is, the theater is not a mirror. I don't go there to see myself. In fact, the moment I do, I become too comfortable. I think, I know what this is. But I want to be shocked. I want to be shocked into recognition.
Right.
It's like suddenly seeing someone that you didn't expect to be there, or something, or someone says something and it brings back memories. If I'm watching a world that is not my world, I'm getting drawn in. I'm not a voyeur. I start to become a participant. And then the moment something happens that relates back to me, when I think, I feel that, or I remember feeling that, or I've gone through that, suddenly the impact for me is twice as strong because it's unexpected.
For me, opera works that way, but it also works, especially with early opera, with the quantity of repeats. Where please God don't put up the surtitle again, because they're just saying the same thing again. So please let me just
enjoy it musically.
But what happens is that dare I say it, there are large stretches in opera of, I wouldn't call it tedium, but of complacency, where one feels comfortably superior to and distant from, and then moments of reality blindside one. And I found myself wondering if that's one of the magic effects of the dance. There's not often a narrative through line in the ballet.
No.
In the dance.
The dancers in our operas are meant to be there participating in the scene. So they're not there as a divertissement. Absolutely not. I mean, by the 19th century, the singers leave the stage, the dancers run on in their point shoes, dressed completely differently from everyone else, and they do their thing. In 17th, 18th century opera, the dancers do become characters, but they're supporting whatever that particular scene happens to be. Don Giovanni, so we have a ballroom scene, so the dancers are there, dancing in the ballroom scene. It heightens the reality of that scene.
And at the time it's written, are they slipping notes from somebody in the balcony to the dancer that they're after, or not?
I suppose the equivalent still does happen at times, but to me, the really thrilling thing about the dancing, in addition to the fact that it helps tell the story, it also acts as a sort of visual palate cleanser, if you like. I think we have to accept the fact that the way we experience opera now is not the way it was meant to be experienced originally. Right up to the 19th century, when opera started, the house lights were up. People were able to see each other clearly. They moved around the theater. They had conversations with each other. In La Scala, even now, they've left the tables that you can fold down that you would have had your dinner on. They don't do it now, but you could order dinner to your box. The really beautiful boxes have little living rooms, little salons off the back, sometimes with a bed, sometimes with beautiful pieces of furniture. So the opera was a social event. Now that we've screwed the chairs into the floor, which I don't mind, we turn the lights down, we take away all the senses, we force people to face the stage, and then we want them to concentrate. And plus, we're not aristocrats. We've all been working all day. We're tired. Maybe we've had a drink. And then we sit down in the dark for 4 hours and we're supposed to stare at the stage as people sing phonetically in a language that we don't understand. I'm sorry, that's too much for me. I need more distraction than that. I want to be able to listen to the music and enjoy the music. If I start becoming bored with the music, and I defy anyone to say they can sit through 4 hours of opera and not find moments of tedium, then I want to be able to watch some beautiful people dancing. And if I'm not into dancing, I want to be able to look at decor and scenery that helps tell the story. It thrills me. And to me, the absolute ideal, which is one of the reasons I love the Elgin, we have a hydraulic pit. We have the orchestra high enough that you can watch the orchestra play as well. We have no one folding up their music and leaving because they've finished playing for that night and having people applauding to an empty pit. I'm not going to name any names, but I'm telling you, that just shocks me every time I see that. I'm in the balcony of an opera house or ballet house anywhere in the world. Tafel music, we are so fortunate to have that orchestra. This is not an orchestra, an opera orchestra. It's not a pit band. This is a great, great period ensemble who love playing opera. They are all paying such attention. They're working so hard. It's adorable. At times they're craning their necks trying to see the stage. But I've always loved watching them play from the first time I ever saw them more than 30 years ago. The physicality of how they bow, the very nature of their bowing, the beauty of their instruments. So that's another option. You can just watch Jean Lamont play the violin. You can watch Charlotte playing the harpsichord. You can look at a theorbo with a 6-foot neck and wonder what the hell it is. It all plays into it. And to me, that's the wonderful thing about this opera, this style of opera. We're saying it's not really happening, people. We're not even making believe it's really happening. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be a profound experience for you, but we want you to be able to enjoy every possible element. There's no invisible wall. There is no wall. The singers know that you're there. They're looking at you. They're talking to you. They're going to respond to you. And it just, to me, it's about demystifying the whole thing. And making something accessible doesn't mean you have to dumb it down. Making something accessible to me simply means that you clarify. The moment you know what's happening, it's accessible. But why anyone would want to make an opera more difficult to understand is inconceivable to me. I mean, I've had so many singers come into Figaro rehearsals in the past who have sung it many times and said, "Can anyone tell me what really happens in the last act?" I mean, I've seen productions where Susanna comes out wearing a dress, and then the Countess comes out wearing the exact same dress, as though she has two of the same dresses in her closet. I mean, it's insane. But the problem is, Figaro is very, very complicated. In the 18th century, people loved those complicated stories. They tie it into a knot, and then they slowly pick it apart. You can't pick it apart in 2 weeks of rehearsal. It's not possible. So better that you just have a concept, hang the whole thing on that, and have people line up and belt out their music as beautifully as possible. But if you want to tell the story, unfortunately, I think you need 4 weeks, you need 5 weeks. People have got to figure out, who am I talking to? Who can hear me? Who can't hear me? What do I mean? This was the beauty with the 8 weeks of Lucio Silla. Every person who was in that cast in Salzburg spoke Italian fluently. And we would still get to scenes. Olga would suddenly turn to Rolando and said, "You sound ironic when you're saying that to me. You don't really mean that. You don't think he's being ironic." He said, "Of course he's being ironic. He's not really in love with her." She said, wait. You are in love with me. You're in love with me. You can't talk to me like that. I can't do this. It was so wonderful. I thought, my God, I feel like I'm truly in the theater. This is recitative, the stuff that people usually say, let's just get through this and get to the good stuff.
So how do you, even with this, I mean, I know you're working with people that you work with a lot, but how do you how do you actually find the way to cut to the chase on this discovery when you don't have your 8 weeks?
Well, I don't have 8 weeks, but I do have 5. And that's a significant rehearsal period
Yeah.
for any North American company.
Yeah.
We've made a conscious decision to produce only twice a year in Toronto. With the budget that we have as a company, we could easily produce 3 times. If we were going to rent everything, we could probably produce 4. If we were going to bring it down to 3 weeks or 2 weeks of rehearsal.
But that's not the
We're
point.
simply, it's not the point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's better, it's different. We're doing something else.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the singers. If people come to us, we don't suddenly give them a larger salary. You know, singers are paid by the show, dancers are paid by the week. But singers, each show, they get X number of thousands of dollars. Our singers are not paid more per show because they rehearse for 5 weeks. They could rehearse for 1 week, that's still their fee.
Right.
So to begin with, I have people who want to rehearse.
Right.
They love rehearsing. They couldn't do it 5 times a year. They wouldn't be able to afford to live. But I've had singers and agents actually say, Marshall, they can only afford to work with you once a year. But they are going to work with you.
So we're using up all our time on this one show, which
Yay!
means we'll have to come back or cut to the chase on a couple of other little topics. So, but maybe not. I mean, maybe we should just say this is the one because
Sure.
it's the one
It's a
that's
big
on
deal.
your plate. It's a big
It's
deal.
the blowout of our 30th anniversary. Yeah. And I mean, I feel badly. I haven't even mentioned David Follis, who has been with us for
Right.
28 of the 30 years.
Is David in the pit for this one?
Absolutely, he is.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, we made a very conscious decision to redesign the show, not only because it was so huge, we could have had it designed down, but we
Yeah.
thought, no, it's our 30th anniversary. We need our creative team
So
making
Gerard-
this statement. Gerard
Ger-
Gauchi
yeah.
is doing the set and costume designs.
Right.
And although I must say what we had in Europe was beautiful, but in Europe it was interesting. I felt that we had a 3-dimensional version of what we do 2-dimensionally.
Yeah.
Because we're all about painted, soft canvas.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, everything was being able to be.
Well, you're making a
truly built.
virtue of an Elgin necessity.
Yes,
in
exactly.
that, aren't you? To some
Exactly.
extent, but it's also for an audience that change sense of what constitutes perspective
Yeah.
is very interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
And
Yeah.
takes you out of your
Yes.
usual as well.
Now, one of our singers, I should mention 2 of the singers from Europe are also coming here.
That's
Krešimir
Krešimir
Spitzer,
yeah.
that wonderful Croatian tenor who I have been
And
crazy
he's been
about.
with you in
He's done 5 shows with us.
5
now.
shows with you.
And I heard Krešimir for the first time. I saw him on the DVD of William Christie's Return of Ulysses, the Monteverdi. I was so overwhelmed by his performance. I'd never seen anything like it. I thought he was the greatest singing actor I had ever seen in my life. In fact, I watched the performance obsessively. I'd call people in from the office and say, look at this man, look at this man. And, you know, he was so marvelous. I remember telling myself, I'll never work with him. I could never work with someone like this because how could I direct someone who knows everything? He just seemed, every response seemed to be so perfect. I just thought I would be so intimidated, I'd be frozen in rehearsal.
So you said 2 singers you have to mention?
Yes, and Inga Kalna, Latvian soprano, and I must say, Mark Pynkoski, when he decided he was making his debut as the artistic director of Mozart Woche with this opera, although he was already a big star at the Salzburg Festival, but then he took over Mozart Woche. He said if he couldn't have Inga Kalna sing China, he would not produce Luciusula, which I think is an incredible thing. And at first, you know, I looked at the music, I had a general idea, but I was just surprised. I thought, oh, Mark obviously is very fond of Inga. But I realized after we got into rehearsal, he truly meant he did not feel that there were other sopranos who would be able to handle the role with that degree of finesse. Inga is a machine, and she's an artist. it's unbelievable because I think you usually get one or the other.
You
Her
often do, yeah.
astonishing coloratura, her tremendous musicality. She is a musicologist as well, multilingual, but the stamina to be able to get through this role. Any number of great coloratura sopranos would be able to sing one of Gina's arias in a concert, but it's the stamina of getting through the entire evening. She definitely has the toughest role in the entire show, and you know, it's like a pleasure for her. She's just so radiantly happy when she's singing. There's nothing to it. She's made to sing this sort of thing. It's like Queen of the Night. You should sing it or you shouldn't. But if you think maybe you want to sing it, then maybe you shouldn't.
Maybe you shouldn't, yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is very much what Gina is.
Another one, I'm looking forward to this.
Good. So am I. So am I. I can't wait.
We'll have to take up some other topics another time.
Good. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to it.
Thanks, Marshall.
Okay.
And thank you all.
Pleasure.